Anne Frye. I am a UK-based independent consultant in the mobility of disabled and older people, working in this field for more than 30 years, long-time engagement with ITF and its predecessor, the CMT, and with a lot of other international organisations, including the European Commission, the United Nations, and so on. Accessibility for people with disabilities and older people has been on the agenda for years, but it is still not being delivered well or systematically in many places. So what we wanted to do was to focus on examples of success. Rather than go over and over why it's not working and what's not working, we wanted to bring together people who were doing it well, people who'd made a success of it. And really that was the focus, to see what needs to change so that accessibility is delivered in a sustainable way, in a way that works for people with disabilities, and in a way that works for transport operators, manufacturers, and all the other parties involved. It was really about bringing together not huge numbers, but key people who've devoted, in some cases, their whole working lives, in other cases, more recently, to looking at accessibility, at what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to change to bring it forward. So really the crux of it was that we had a group of people, both presenting and participating, who are all working in this field and frankly who are all passionate about it. That was part of the key too. To my mind, it's actually more effective than bigger conferences where you have set piece speeches. The beauty of the round table was that most of the focus was on discussion. We had short introductory presentations and lots of time for input and ideas and discussion. And that really drove the agenda forward. And I think that's what makes the roundtable format so successful. I think, gosh, there were so many. Really a lot of positivity that came out of it. I think what was very clear was that not one model works universally. We heard of a lot of different cultures and issues that make things work in one place that may be more challenging in another. But we also identified some underlying principles. For example, that accessibility isn't really good enough. What we should be aiming for is inclusion. You know, you can say, well, this bus or this train or this station is accessible. Yes, you've got a ramp or an induction loop for deaf people, but you haven't made it inclusive. We had a particular focus on the dignity of people with disabilities. So, for example, enabling someone who's a wheelchair user to access a metro system without having to press a button and make themselves known. And, you know, for a lot of wheelchair users, there's a great vulnerability and a sense that I'm being a nuisance. Why should people have to get out of my way and so on? So systems like the one we heard about from Barcelona Metro, where the train automatically records as a wheelchair user on the platform and informs the driver. So the doors open, the whole thing works. Discreet, sensitive, dignified. That's the sort of goal that I think we should be aiming for. We also discussed that while standards are hugely important, they should be the floor, not the ceiling. That they really, in too many cases, governments, operators, manufacturers are saying we're complying with the law. But actually, they're working down to a minimum. And compliance is not inclusion. I think that was a key phrase that we took away. We need flexibility so that standards can actually be improved, but we also need to make it clear that, you know, take the standard as your base, not your ceiling. I think the key underlying one is always engage with people with disabilities. We talked a lot about co-creation. Over the years, so many operators, manufacturers have produced a prototype or got a new system or vehicle. Then they've invited people with disabilities to come and say how lovely it is. And when they say, well, actually, that doesn't work and this doesn't work, it's too late. There's an expression that it's always better to build it in than bolt it on. Retrofitting is always more expensive and difficult. So really the key message is, when you're still at the initial blueprint phase, before you've cut any metal or whatever it is you're going to do, invite people in at that stage and say, what is it that makes this work for you? And that then is embedded in the design and construction.